Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Ping Identity Chief Marketing Officer, Brian Bell.
Lady, running down to the riptide, taken away to the dark side. I want to be your left-hand man.
Good morning. How's everyone doing on day 3? Day 3 already, wow. Welcome. Did anyone have a chance to see that sunrise over Lake Michigan this morning? It was pretty incredible. It is a beautiful, beautiful day. And although my understanding is there were quite a few people that were at Wrigley Field last night, and then even more that were at the bar well after midnight. So I'm not sure who actually got up to see the sunrise besides myself and a few others. We have a fantastic day and a great way to start off with Alex Simons from Microsoft. Alex is the program director of the identity division at Microsoft. He is a long-standing technical visionary speaker at CIS. He's a great partner to Ping, and he is a leader in our industry in driving interoperability standards, and that's what he's going to talk to us about today. So a big welcome to Alex Simons. Oh, you snuck out.
Thank you, Brian.
Good morning.
So as I was getting ready for this speech this year, I had my whole leadership team together, and we were looking over data and the trends in the marketplace and what was happening in the open standards world, and realized that we're really at a very magical point in time if you think about what's happening in the digital identity world. And so what I want to share with you today is a pretty exciting opportunity where I think if we work together as an industry, we finish up the last few bits of some critical open standards, and we really push together, we can probably get over 1 billion people in the world experiencing a much more secure, much more modern, much more exciting world by the time we get here next year. So that's why I've picked this little hashtag, the idea that by the time we come back here next year, I think we can be well over 1 billion people experiencing kind of a modern client and cloud world. So let me tell you let me walk you through some of the things that we're seeing. If you think about the old world, it was a pretty simple world, especially if you were in enterprise IT, or simpler at least. You kind of had all your users and your devices and your apps and your data inside your firewall, and while it was never totally clean, at least you felt like your firewall and your DMZ gave you a handle on it, right? But the world has shifted pretty rapidly in the last 10 years, and in fact, most of the interesting innovation is now happening outside of the corporate firewall. I think you can see a world, in fact, we can all see a world 5 years from now where every major organization in the world will have many nodes of compute, right? One of those nodes of compute will certainly be what today they think of as their on-premise data center, and they'll have a private cloud version of that, and it'll be much more efficient. But an awful lot of the innovation and the excitement and the new things that we'll be able to do will be in these nodes of compute. They'll be in places like Salesforce and Amazon and Office 365 and Workday and Slack, right? And all of a sudden, we'll be in a place where an awful lot of what's interesting and innovative in the world is happening out in the cloud in these nodes of compute. And then the second trend we can all see, right, is that the number of different kinds of devices that'll be connecting up and interoperating with your enterprise is just skyrocketing. So today, obviously, these look like PCs and tablets and phones, but increasingly they'll look like things like watches and Alexa speakers and industrial IoT devices, right? You can see the world is coming where we're going to have millions and billions of these different kinds of devices that you need to figure out how do you harness for the good of your business. And then the last key piece of this, of course, is people. And you'll see, and we're all seeing the same trends here as well. When you want to digitally interoperate with your partners and your customers and your employees and make sure they're all getting a great experience, these folks are all going to show up with their identities that they use, and you want to be able to seamlessly interoperate with them in the correct context, right? And so the potential here is unbelievable. And I think within just a year, you'll see that we can basically wire all these things together. But the thing, if you're an enterprise that's scary, is random chaotic wiring like this, right? You want to get to a point, you got to find a way to harness all of the capabilities that we're unleashing, but do it in a way where you can be secure and you can be compliant and meet let the board of directors sleep at night. And the key to that is having the right kind of amazing, intelligent cloud identity system. Right? And the reason this is the case is because of some amazing work that's happened in the industry over the last 10 years. In a world where your firewall and your DMZ no longer give you control over your corporate resources, your identity system based on some amazing open standards work does. And this is the underpinning of modern computing, the ability to coordinate who and which device can get to which resource at what times a day, under what situations, in a way that you can monitor and secure. And that's what we think of when we talk about identity as the new control plane. Giving you the ability to harness this world of cloud and devices and identities in a way that, essentially we can all sleep at night and know that our CEOs won't get fired. Now, what are the characteristics of a really great identity control plane? I really think of it as having three main things it has to do. The first is it has to be interconnected and productive. So it has to give your employees and your partners and your customers the ability to access all of the resources that they need all around the world. Inherently, it has to be secure, right? If it's not secure, you might as well just go back to the old world. And this is a big, big area with a lot of interesting innovation happening. And then finally, it has to be intelligent, right? It has to be backed up by cloud-powered artificial intelligence and machine learning, because the scale of the data that we're talking about and the scale of the interactions and the devices and the users is such that humans can't monitor this anymore. It has to be done by machines. So let's dive a little bit into each one of these. When I think about interconnected and productive, the key here, first of all, is that everything needs to be standards-based. And I'm going to talk a lot more about this, but luckily we're at a point where you can not only just say that it has to be true, but you can actually make this work now. The second is perimeterless. It has to work inside your organization, but it has to work across organizations, but it also has to work around the globe. Right? It has to work across devices. It has to work across geos. It has to be GDPR compliant. And so there's an awful lot of work that we need to do to make sure that when I go to reach out to a customer or to a partner or an employee, wherever they happen to be in the world, we can easily give them access to all the resources they need. And then finally, of course, it has to be easy to use. I think we've all learned from the iPhone and from the web, right, that the consumerization of IT means that you can't deliver the kind of some of the nasty old experiences that we used to deliver to people in IT. Today, these things really have to be delightful, they have to be easy to use, and they have to fit into the everyday usage patterns that that your employees and customers and partners are expecting. The good news, and I really, this is based on probably 10 years worth of work by a whole bunch of people, is that we're at a point where in the next 120 to maybe 180 days, all of the standards that we need for the plumbing, if you think about the core infrastructure plumbing to make this modern world of cloud and devices work, is all ready. It's either going to be done, essentially in RFC, or it'll be at least in an implementer's draft, where it's stable enough that we can all build software together that all is going to interoperate, right? And this is built on the back of giants, right? Like this is years and years of work. If you think what's happened in the OpenID forum, if you think about all the work that's gone into FIDO, if you think about all the work that's gone into making things like SCIM happen, right? We are at a magical point in time where all of these things are solidifying and we can see that they actually work. And we're going to show you a bunch of demos about those things. In reality, it's not a myth anymore. It's not a coming in the future. It's happening right now. So for us, this has been an amazing, using these open standards have let us do some amazing things. So for instance, we can now add new identity providers almost at will. In fact, at our Build conference about a month ago, we announced that we now support any OpenID Connect OAuth compatible IDP. Right? And so the number of different identities you can bring with you and now use to do amazing things has just skyrocketed because of the amazing work in the open standards world. Another standard that, for a while I wasn't really sure was ever going to take off. I remember sitting with Ian Glazer maybe 3 years ago in a conference room in San Francisco talking about SCIM and how we both had SCIM connectors ready to go and nothing to talk to. Right? Like no apps, like nothing to provision into. And we were just like, gosh, I hope at some point there'll be something for us to use these SCIM provisioning systems for. And in the last, I'd say 6 months, that has completely changed. Right? And all of a sudden, it's become almost a default assumption for new SaaS apps that they'll support SCIM. So for us, the first place we saw this was our integrations with Workplace by Facebook and Slack. Both of those integrations are up and running today, and we provision hundreds of thousands of users a day now using those integrations which are built on Skim. The nice thing for us about this is that it has greatly cut the amount of work and the time to market it takes for us to build a new connector. So we can now build connectors in less than 6 weeks, in fact, in most cases, in less than 4 weeks, to essentially any SaaS app that supports, in fact, any application. We have customers who use these for on-premise apps as well, to any application that supports a Skim interface. And that means that we're able to dramatically increase the velocity of bringing end-to-end provisioning and workflow support for the lifecycle of your identity into all kinds of applications. So you can see these are all the ones that are available today, and we've got a whole load coming soon and even more in the pipe. So this key innovation as well is another example of where open standards are really, really at the point, it's almost like a step function is occurring right now, where we're going from the old world to the new world, and it's happening today. It's very exciting. For us, this has enabled us to bring all kinds of new applications on board with Azure Active Directory. So every month, another 10 to 20,000 new applications get integrated with the directory using standards. So in the month of May, we had 219,000 applications written by ISVs other than Microsoft that worked with Azure AD, all based on this amazing set of open standards work. In fact, you might be surprised to know that aside from Office 365, the single largest app used with our directory every day is Google Apps, right? And that's all. There's nothing special about our integration with Google. People like it, obviously, and it's really easy to use, but it is all just standards-based, right? And so this is a huge change. And in less than 12 months, we've been able, by using open standards, to go from being the directory for Microsoft stuff to being the directory for essentially any cloud app you can imagine. And then just last week, we announced the availability of our new Ping access for Azure Active Directory. So this is through our partnership with Ping. And I am really excited about this because it's going to let us unlock tens of thousands of additional applications that today are kind of trapped on-premise and don't have a way to become part of that world of the nodes of compute. And through our partnership with Ping, we're now basically unlocking the ability for all of those legacy apps that use things like header auth and other non-standards-based authentication to join that amazing new world. Really, really breakthrough. And we have a lot of customers today who are already up and running and enjoying these benefits. We're going to show you a demo of how all that works in just a sec. Now, the next key pillar I talked about was secure. And there's lots of different elements of secure. I don't want to simplify here. There's a ton of work that we need to do for secure. But in this particular case, I want to focus on one specific aspect of secure, which we're making incredible progress on. And this is in the area of strong authentication, right? So the ability to authenticate from a device to the cloud or to a server in a way that you can be sure that that is the user, and you can be sure they weren't hacked and weren't phished. And this is really in fact, I should just point out, this really is, I believe, the year that we can finally say, hey, death to passwords, right? Like all of the technology is lined up and the ecosystem is ready to go. FIDO for us is the key to making this happen. If you look at the FIDO 2.0 set of standards, right, the things that we've done in WebAuth, in the CTAP programs, and then with the FIDO authenticators, all three of these core technologies and core protocols are now at the point where they work. And within, 60 to 90 days, we'll have implementer drafts ready for them, right? So we're going to show you these working today. But this puts us in a world where now anybody can walk up to any device and authenticate securely, knowing that the risk of phishing and the risk of trying to reuse passwords and all those things are gone. So I really want to congratulate the industry, and especially the people who've been working so hard to get these standards to this point. It has not been an easy job, but boy, the world is going to be a lot safer as a result of it. For us, this is particularly exciting. Every day we manage about 1 billion identities at Microsoft between the Microsoft account system and the Azure AD system. And using this set of FIDO protocols, by this time next year, all of these people will be able, from any device, on any OS, with any of the mainstream browsers, to authenticate using a security key or maybe a biometric on the device like their fingerprint or an iris scan, or the Microsoft Authenticator app on their device if they happen to have an older device. and from there be able to access any on-premise app, any web app, or any SaaS service, right? And this is less than 1 year away, right? So and we couldn't do this without OAuth 2, without SCIM, and without FIDO 2.0. So really amazing progress, and we're in a world where now these things, we go from speculation and futures to no, we can have 1 billion people doing this in less than 12 months. So to show you how this all works and that we're not just blowing smoke, what I want to do is bring Nitika Gupta up on stage. Nitika is a program manager in our identity protection and security team, and she's going to walk us through a bunch of demos here to show us how all these things work.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. So Alex talked about open standards and security so far. Now we'll show you how these could be used in day-to-day experiences. So now imagine it's my first day at work. I just joined this company called Contoso. Can you switch to the wolf vision?
Got it. Yep.
OK. Now it's there. Awesome. So it's my first day, and my boss, who happens to be in the audience, he handed me a shiny Surface and a YubiKey. So I plug in this YubiKey, tap on it, and voila, I signed in without a username or password. And what you just saw in front of you was an early implementation of FIDO 2.0 credentials that just Alex talked about. Next, I'm within the access panel. And here I have all the apps I need to get my job done. And this is on day 1. I have all the apps pre-provisioned. I signed in with a YubiKey. My company uses Slack for collaboration. Thanks to SCIM provisioning, now Azure AD has automatically provisioned my account in Slack, so Slack already knows who I am. I didn't have to enter my credentials again. I didn't have to create another account.
It's very cool.
So another app that my team uses is the Contoso Retail Services app. What's not obvious here is that this is an on-premises application that uses header-based authentication. Thanks to our partnership with Ping Access, now we can offer remote access to this application. I didn't have to VPN into this machine to get to it. Now let's say Alex is bored of his job at Microsoft, and he decides to quit his job and be a vendor. And I need Alex's help on a project. So I sent him an email invite on his Google address. He uses Google to manage his business. And let's see what happens.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look at the guest portal that you guys offer up. So here you can see, now this is using our new identity experience framework, which is based on the OAuth 2 set of standards. And you can see here I've got the option to go ahead and sign in with Google. So I'm going to go out. This is going to redirect me out to my Google account where I can just sign in. And what's cool about this is underneath the covers now, our identity experience engine is taking that federated flow. It's recognizing that I am a contractor, right, or a vendor, and that I need to sign the terms of use before I'm able to go in and access these documents that Nitika wants to share with me. So here's our terms of use, and you can see, oh.
Do you guys agree to it?
Should we agree to those terms of use? There we go. So I'm going to accept the terms of use here. And then this is now going to pass me through, right, using my Google identity. Just remember how weird this is. I'm using my Google identity now to be able to get into Office 365 to check a bunch of documents that Nitika wants me to take a look at. And even cooler, our conditional access system has recognized that this is an unmanaged device. It's not domain joined. It's not on our network. It's not being MDM managed. And so it has used OIDC claims to let SharePoint know that it should go into restricted mode. So you can see up here that now I can't download, print, or sync using this device. And all of this is just done using the same set of open standards we've been talking about.
Yeah. And this provides you the right balance between security and productivity. So you can choose where you want to draw the line.
Cool. All right, well, we'll be right back.
Awesome.
So let's talk about, oh, yeah, hey.
Hey.
I love it when a demo works. That's the best.
Yeah.
So let's talk about intelligence, because this is the other big thing you need to have to run a really great cloud identity system. As I was saying, the volumes of data from devices, from users, and from applications are growing at such an exponential rate. And you will have so many interactions as an organization with so many different entities that you can no longer reason over this as a human. Right? So we really have to move into a world where we let the machines do the thinking for us and take care of all the normal things, and where humans then only deal with exceptions. And this is one of the key things I think we view as an innovation that you just have to have for a great cloud identity system. This relies on having tons of data, right? Like, you can't do this over small data sets. You have to have giant data sets. You have to have adaptive learning capabilities. You can't just create an algorithm and assume it's going to keep working. In fact, what we find is that our security algorithms, for instance, basically have to change every 24 hours. The bad guys adapt so quickly that by the next morning, if we don't have a new set of algorithms, we can't stop them anymore. Right? And then finally, you need to have real-time mitigation. It's not good enough for the system to just be smart. It has to be able to take action on your behalf, because you can't react fast enough to the bad guys or to the weird behavior in your corporation or from some device. You have to rely on the machine to do this for you. We debated about what picture to put up there, but that seemed like a good one. So let me tell you about a couple different examples of this and how we use standards, again, to achieve these same things. So many of you may have heard of the Microsoft Graph. If not, I'll just tell you, it's a standards-based set of APIs to access all of the information that you store in Microsoft services. And of course, you have to have the correct permissions and ACLs and all those things, right? But if you want to find out, if I want to have an application be able to find out everything about me, like where's my mail, where's my calendar, what am I storing in my OneDrive, who's my boss, that can all be done programmatically now using the graph. And the program just gets back a set of JSON, right? So it hands off an OAuth access token to prove who it is, and it's working on my behalf, and then it can bring back lots of data and use it programmatically on any platform in the world. This is a really big innovation, and we'll show you how this works in just a second. Inside of the Microsoft Graph, there's a particularly important set of nodes to us, though, and we call these the Intelligent Security Graph. And this is where we bring together all of the data across Microsoft, from things like all of the logins to Azure Active Directory and Microsoft account, all of the gameplay on Xbox, the spam mail sent to Outlook.com and to Office 365, data from the Windows Defender ATP, which is telling us which set of machines are infected all over the world, and then finally a whole ton of data from our digital crimes unit and our cyber defense unit. We bring all of this data together, and it turns into more than 10 terabytes of data every day, and we can feed that then into our machine learning system. So this giant set of data, which gives us visibility across the entire world, then gets fed into our real-time machine learning system. And the machine learning system uses algorithms to go look and figure out a whole bunch of things that would be important to any company in the world. Is this user highly privileged? Have their credentials leaked somewhere? Are they accessing a particularly sensitive application? Was this IP that they're coming from part of a botnet? Are they coming on from a Tor network? Like, all kinds of things that you want to be able to take proactive action on, right? The machine learning system can point out. And some of these algorithms are really cool, like our impossible travel algorithm and our usual locations algorithms look at users and clusters of similar users, and then based on where you log in from and a cluster of users like you logs in from, kind of knows where you're likely to be. So Nitika and I both work in Seattle, and we both log in from Redmond at the Microsoft office all the time. So our IP addresses are going to be very similar. And I happen to work out of London all the time as well. We have a bunch of big customers in London. So if Nitika were to go to London and log in, you'd see that, well, that's pretty normal for her in our cluster, right? So her risk score would be low. But if Nitika were to all of a sudden log in from Tokyo and no one in our cluster goes there, then her risk score becomes very high. And that's the kind of things that algorithms can help us figure out. And so for every login now to the system, our machine learning system can look and assign risk for both the user and for that specific session. And then you as a corporation, as an organization, can decide what actions do you want this machine to take on your behalf. Do you want to allow access, require an MFA, limit access, deny access? And all of this can be done in a policy-driven way. So this is one of the best examples, I think, of how you need to have a cloud-powered intelligence to run a really great identity system. We use it every day. And in fact, it's always a scary world out there. In fact, if you didn't know how scary it was, let me tell you, it is really frightening, especially lately. The election in the US seems to have unleashed all of the bad guys. On the Microsoft account side, let me just point out a few of the interesting numbers here. So in the month of May, we blocked 115 million attempts to log in with the correct username and the correct credentials to take over an account, right? So somebody who we knew was the bad guy with the correct username and credentials was trying to take over an account, and we blocked those, right? In that same month, we also saw 1.7 million attempts to take over accounts where we used an MFA challenge automatically to protect that account and make sure that the user wasn't getting taken over. And on the Azure AD side, you see similar things. We use the same system behind all of these. So last month, there were 2.4 million users in our directories marked as at risk, right? Meaning that either someone was trying to log into their location from a weird location, or a botnet, or their username and password had been leaked out onto into maybe the Yahoo breach or something like that. And then more than 10,000 users were confirmed to be compromised last month by the system. So this is the kind of scale I'm talking about when I say, hey, you have to have a cloud-powered identity system and an intelligent cloud-powered identity system. So let's go ahead and take a look again at how this works in the real world.
Awesome. So earlier in the demos, I showed an early implementation of FIDO 2.0. But the current reality is passwords are still common. They are used by all of us here. So next, we're going to show you how we can protect against password attacks. So let's imagine my username and password is out there. It's leaked. And I'm trying to sign in to my work email address as usual. I don't know that my credentials are leaked. I just sign in. What's happening here is that identity protection detected that my credentials are leaked. And now it's prompting me to verify my identity. Here, I'm getting a push notification on my mobile device. You guys can see the phone. I'm going to quickly verify it. And next, I need to change my password because my password is leaked. So I'm going to start with a simple common password because it's easy to remember. So let's say password 123. So what's happening here is that now the system is going to tell me that they have seen the password too many times. So identity protection looks at the actual attack data on our systems and builds a dynamic banned password list. Let's try something more difficult this time. So I'm just going to copy-paste a password. Let's say Kofifi. Let's see what happens. Aha, same error. So the banned password list might vary by organization. So what I've done in this case is I've customized the list to block the word Kofifi. So if you guys were still awake, hopefully you guys had your coffee, you would notice that I replaced the O with the 0. So I was trying to be clever. I thought that this will do the trick. But identity protection is still a step ahead. So it knows the common substitutions that end users use, and it prevents those as well. So I'm going to keep trying. Obviously, I have no choice here. I need to get work done.
All right. So while Nitika's finishing up that, let's go ahead and take a look at the graph. One of the coolest ways to look at it is to do something like this. Hey, Alexa, what's next?
Next event is Demo the Graph, today at 9 a.m.
So this is a really, do you know how much standards tech went to make that work? So that is Alexa using an OAuth access token to get to the Microsoft Graph and pull back a JSON-based payload of my calendar, right? And then to parse through that and read out what the next event on my calendar is. Pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
But the graph gets even more interesting when you start looking at the security nodes in the graph. So this is our Identity Protection Center, which is one of the ways you can visualize the intelligent security graph. So here you can see all of my logins that have happened recently. Let's take a look at a few of these just to see what we're looking at, right? So you can see I've got users with leaked credentials and sign-ins from anonymous IP addresses and impossible travel. And each one of these, the machine has gone in and taken action on for me, but I can see them and take additional action if I need to. But I noticed up at the top of my screen here that I have 8 users at high business risk. So let's take a look at these and see what's going on here. So if you look at all of those, it appears, oh, hey, Nitika, look, you're one of these.
Oops.
It appears that Nitika reused her password and it was leaked somewhere. Way to go. You're in the identity protection team. You should know better. Now, this isn't the only way you can get to the data, though. For instance, since all of these are based on open APIs and using JSON, you can easily export it out to Splunk. So you can see here, this is that same data set we were just looking at, but visualized using maybe what would be your tool of choice. And I can start drilling in and seeing, hey, where are all of my risky events? And you can see here I had 19 anonymous risk events in Northern Europe. Right, so this ability to have these kinds of open standards and interoperability between platforms based on top of this super intelligent set of machine learning and giant data sets we think is really the key to unlocking this world that we're talking about. So with that, I thought I would just wrap up. And first of all, say a giant thank you to everybody in the open standards world who has done so much work to get us to this point. If you think about OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect and the work that's happened there, that is in great shape. It's used everywhere. And man, if you're not using it in production, I don't know what you're waiting for. We're right on the edge of having exactly the same things true in FIDO and in SCIM, right? If we get FIDO, the remaining FIDO 2.0 standards, a little bit more work in SCIM, and we get token binding done, right? Then we're in the place where all of the things we just talked about can work. And I'm not talking about like years of work. I'm talking about we need 60 days of really hard work to get to that point in these areas. So if you take all of these standards together, like the key innovations that have happened, I really do think this is the year of cloud identity, where we can modernize the experience and the security for over 1 billion people all around the world by the time we get back here next year. And I hope you'll join me in this quest to really move from the old world to the new world. The ways that you could do that, even if just the simplest ways, if you're a large organization, please make sure that your application SaaS RFPs all require the modern standards. We really want the whole industry betting on OAuth 2.0 and OIDC, SCIM 2.0, FIDO, and token binding. And if you're not using these, please, even if you never bought a single identity thing from Microsoft, help us all out, go home and update your RFPs to require these going forward. And if you have the time and energy, we'd love for you to get involved in the community. Right? Joining any one of these working groups and helping us get the last set of these standards over the line to the point where we can all go start working on them in the next 60 to 90 days would be a huge benefit. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate your attention. And again, thank you to all of you who have devoted so much of your energy and time to getting these open standards to this point. It's going to be a magical year in cloud identity.